For those of us that, like me, have had the privilege and great fortune to be introduced to fishing or have spent a lot of time on the water with somebody who has decades of experience, the old timers, if you will, who have knowledge, tricks, and lessons that they've learned that are timeless. Some of those things that get imparted upon us change the way we fish, but for me, one of the most important lessons I ever learned from all my time fishing with crusty old Captain Cliff is it's okay to kiss.
Oh, baby. Nice. Look at that. I could just kiss you and I might.
Okay, not that kind of kiss. I'm talking about keep it simple, stupid. The fundamental principle that has so many applications in life definitely has its place in fishing. Let's dive in. For many of us, our time on the water is incredibly rare and very precious. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I can put a lot of pressure on myself to maximize my efficiency when I am able to get out and go fishing. Sometimes this ultimately actually just detracts from the fun of going fishing. And that's where that fundamental lesson that I've learned from Cliff comes into play. Sometimes doing less is more. So the problem starts to happen when you overcomplicate fishing. This is something we all can slip into at times. And again, I'll talk about this, but there is a place to have every little bit of gear possible for a certain condition type. But most of the time, you're going out to relax. You're going out to take a break from work, get that breath of fresh air, reconnect with nature, and get reinvigorated. Juggling multiple rods, rigs, every bait type possible can actually add stress instead of fun. And trying to cover every single condition in all circumstances leads to decision-making fatigue and, frankly, less time actually fishing sometimes. So there are benefits to keeping it simple beyond just keeping the decision-making to a minimum and allowing relaxation to be more prominent in your day. For example, if you take 4 or 5 baits, let's say, and make sure a couple of them are not confidence baits, like new techniques you want to learn, this approach will actually force you to spend more time using that bait because you just don't have options with you to switch to. So you can actually force yourself to learn a new bait because we all know how that goes, right? You want to learn a new technique. You go out there, you're getting skunked, you're not catching fish, you're getting bored, you ultimately grab for that confidence bait. Well, now you're not putting in the time you need to get proficient with the bait you'd like to learn, which ultimately makes you a more versatile angler, and that is a good thing. I already mentioned it reduces stress. Less gear to manage means less time messing around with stuff. It means less stuff you got to step over, assuming you don't have a bass boat or something like that that's totally dialed in with compartments for all your gear. This is particularly relevant to those of us that fish from the bank or somebody like me who has just one multi-species boat. I'm often hauling gear onto the boat. I have an entire cart for it, and then I got to haul it off at the end of the day. I've banged up gear, broken gear, bent reels, just because I don't have the proper space for all of this stuff. That's stressful. So it helps you maintain your gear a little bit better and reduce that stress and that work of having to load your boat, unload your boat, haul everything down to a fishing spot if you got to hike in, if you're a bank fisherman, that kind of thing. Another benefit is that it encourages creativity. So it forces you to learn how to adapt a few baits to the conditions instead of constantly switching. Now, that might not be the most effective approach. Totally understand that. But again, it's going to help you really become proficient, learn the ins and outs of specific techniques and specific baits by forcing you to try new things you might not have otherwise thought to try because you're limited in what you have available that day. So then it begs the question, all right, if you're going to streamline your gear, what should you take? Now, you could ask this question to 10 different fishermen. You're going to get 10 different answers. There is no right or wrong answer to this. In fact, I would be very curious in the comments below, what are your go-tos if you just want to have an easy day out in the water? But I'll share mine. And again, you could ask somebody else and they're going to have probably totally different answers based on their confidence baits, their local bodies of water, the conditions in which they have to fish. These are going to be different for everybody. This is not a ubiquitous list. This is not the top 5 baits that you see all over the YouTubes. My first one probably would be a crankbait. I do love crankbait fishing, and that's largely why I'd pick this one. It also serves the purpose in the set of 5 baits I'll share of being the more horizontal movement imparting bait. This narrowly beats out a jerkbait for me. I actually prefer fishing jerkbaits. I find it to be more fun. But for a relaxing day, in theory, you could lose yourself a little bit easier just casting and retrieving a crankbait. You can kind of space out and enjoy the time a little bit. With a jerkbait, you really got to be paying attention to your cadence and your depth, and just a little bit more proactivity is involved with a jerkbait. You got to be a little bit more in tune with your bait. But a crankbait allows you to cover water quickly. It's effective in various conditions. I would probably choose something natural or dark. If I felt like carrying 3 crankbait colors, probably something bright in addition to that, something with chartreuse. The next bait I would make sure I always have, whether it's a relaxed day or not, frankly, I always have a drop shot. This would be the vertical presentation in my streamlined setup here. It's great for clear water. It's great when the bass are really, really finicky. Very flexible, versatile bait. And in this situation where I'm just limiting myself to 4 or 5, to me, this is the deeper water bait. So it covers that purpose, that vertical fishing. The third bait on my list is one of the greatest relaxation baits out there, often lovingly referred to as the do-nothing bait, the Ned rig. This is one of the best finesse baits out there. A huge confidence bait for me. It works almost anywhere, anytime. It's very easy to rig up and use, small, lightweight. The Ned rig's a killer. It can be very boring to fish, but it works. I have several brands on tagandtackle.com. I tend to use a lot of the Z-Man stuff. If I had to just pick one weight, probably be 1/10 ounce or maybe 1/15, anywhere in there. And I would generally use a Finesse TRD green pumpkin. That would be my go-to across the board for the Ned rig. Another rig that might replace the Ned rig, or I would probably just actually add to this list, is the Core Tackle Hover Rig. If you're interested in the Core Tackle Hover Rig, it is available at tagandtackle.com. It is one of the highest selling baits that we have on the store. It's also 10% off MSRP all the time, every day, just like all of our other items. This is not a bait that you generally see discounted too often on other online retailers. So if you're interested, check it out at tagandtackle.com, grab yourself a few and try it out. Let us know what you think. And the bonus here is that I would put a Berkeley flatworm on the hover rig as well as on the drop shot. So you can really streamline your plastic choice. Whatever worm is your preference, you can use it on the hover rig and you could probably use it on the drop shot. So another way to just keep your gear to a minimum if you're out just trying to take it easy with a handful of baits. The hover rig imparts a little bit more action than the Ned rig. So if you're in a place where that is something you could desire, it has a nice swirl pattern on the fall, very similar to a tube. So you can get a little bit more movement out of the bait than you would a Ned rig. The other thing is the hover rig you can use in the middle of the water column. So if the fish are suspended, it's a great way to be able to get to them regardless of where they are in that vertical presentation, if you will. You get a little bit more flexibility than I would say on the Ned rig. But the Ned rig, you can just toss that out there, let it sink and let it sit. And it's almost the ultimate in lazy man's fishing. But there is a champion in that regard. The classic, time-tested nightcrawler. I've been out with Cliff so many times, fishing my tail off, switching from rod to bait to jerkbait to soft plastic, thinking, all right, this is what I need in this application, in this condition, and this is what I need over here. And he is keeping up with me or out fishing me by just drowning a worm. He's just throwing a nightcrawler out there with a split shot 10 or 12 inches above it, perhaps, and he's sitting in the chair, having an adult beverage, whatever he feels like doing, and he's just reeling in bass every few minutes, just like I am, or maybe even more so. The nightcrawler is a classic, traditional go-to bait for a reason. I will share 2 disclaimers about that if you are going to use a nightcrawler for bass. So first of all, if you're targeting bass and you're using a nightcrawler, you're very likely to get a bunch of other types of fish. If that is totally cool with you, you're out just to catch fish, nightcrawler can rarely be beaten. If you are specifically looking to target bass, it might be more of a hassle than it's worth because you're going to be pulling off perch and bluegill and trout or whatever else might be interested in that. Catfish, it's a great catfish bait. So that might not be ideal. The other thing is, and this actually applies to the Ned rig too if you let it just sit. If you aren't paying attention to your rod and you really are relaxing and kind of doing other things on the boat or on the bank, that bass is highly likely to eat that nightcrawler and get it gut hooked if you aren't very quick to set the hook and get it in its mouth. For a lot of folks, if you're bass fishermen, your goal is catch and release, and you don't want to gut hook the bass. If you're looking to keep the bass, that's not a problem. But in my experience, if you're fishing with night crawlers, bass have a tendency to more quickly swallow that hook whole than with other baits. So you can exacerbate that problem if you aren't paying attention. So if you're fishing with night crawlers and you want to catch and release the bass and you're targeting bass, even if you're not targeting bass, if you're fishing with a night crawler, you're probably going to get a bite. So it's something you want to pay attention to. Get on that hook set quickly. That way you're not trying to safely remove that hook from the fish's gut. Not a fun time. Well, these are the baits that I would reach for first in my area. I have to mention the skirted jig. Honor award, runner-up. In fact, it might be on the top of most folks' list who are making a similar list. That is an incredibly versatile bait. It's compact, small, easy to haul around. You could throw it in your pocket if you wanted to cheat and go 6 instead of 5. That's a killer bait. I do believe personally that it requires a little bit more knowledge of how to work that bait. So again, like the jerkbait, you're going to be a little bit more engaged with your fishing in that circumstance. But if you want to streamline gear, a jig is also tough to beat. So what's nice about the baits I identified that I would reach for first in this circumstance is I can generally get away with fishing these with just 2 rods. A spinning rod for pretty much everything other than the crankbait, and a bait casting rod for the crankbait. I would probably head towards a medium or medium light spinning rod, and I'd lean towards the medium light because several of those baits, the Ned rig, the hover rig, are actually probably going to do a little bit better on a medium light rod in most circumstances. Medium if you're doing a lot more drop shotting. For the crankbait rod, also I would generally turn towards like a medium power rod and find something with a little bit of flex, something on the moderate fast. Again, you can always tailor your gear specifically to a technique. Even the type of crankbait you're going to be throwing generally would lean towards one type of crankbait rod over another in certain circumstances, but we're going relaxed. We're taking it easy on the gear. You're going to make that trade-off between optimization and less stuff to haul around. On my relaxed light gear days, or days where I got to hike in somewhere, or even if I go on trips and go travel, I take 2 rods that are both 2-piece rods and a backpack and nothing more. So everything that I take has to fit in that backpack. The 2 rods I got are 2-piece because I like to make them very compact for travel, or if I'm walking through brush to get to a bank spot, something like that. I have a 2-piece bait casting rod that took me a little bit of digging to find, and it is a more entry-level Shimano, I believe, Claris, I think. So the bait casters can be a little bit more challenging to find in a 2-piece rod, but spinning rods you can generally find all over the place. So the trade-off with all of this is simplicity versus versatility. The simpler gear loadout forces you to master a few techniques, making you highly effective at those or learn something new. It's lightweight, it's easy to manage, and can lead to more relaxed fishing. If that's your goal, that's great. You have less decision fatigue, more time actually fishing, less time debating what to use. You're just out there, you're doing that relaxing cast retrieve, if nothing else. That might be totally good for your day. Of course, there is the case to be made for bringing a lot of gear. Like I said, that's kind of my normal position. And a lot of folks, particularly bass anglers, I mean, they have entire boats dedicated to storing a whole ton of gear. This makes sense. You want more options for changing conditions, increasing your adaptability and your versatility. This is very critical if your goal is to be as successful as possible. So a lot of this advice doesn't apply to somebody who actually is taking fishing very seriously. If you are a tournament angler, you're on the college circuit, high school team, you are angling, if you will, to become a pro. If you are looking to be a guide, you know, you may actually need to grind through some of that because this is a little bit closer to work for you than the average angler. That makes sense to have to get through some of that work feeling because you're kind of looking to make it your work. For most of us, we go out and fish because we are looking to have fun. Even if you're becoming a guide, you're often taking clients out to show them a good time. Few of us are actually looking to make a living off angling outside of commercial fishing vessels and that kind of thing. And even fewer of us actually have to go out fishing to keep food on the table. If that isn't the situation for you, remember it's okay to do what you need to do to make sure this stays fun for you. In the end, there is no right or wrong choice. This is entirely up to you. It depends on your goals for your day. Some days you just need a couple confidence baits and some sunshine. Other days, you may want to bring the gear needed to have options so you can get at it hard. Whatever you need to do to feel like you got the most out of your time on the water. As we always try to remind everybody on this channel, fishing is not just about catching fish. It's about the experience. It's okay to have a lazy day on the water without the pressure to perform every now and then. And when you want to crank up your skills, it's also okay to get out there and take it really seriously. If fishing starts to feel like work, for most of us, it might be time to dial things back a little bit, reset, and reflect on why we started to do it in the first place. This is not a passion you want to lose. Fishing is very, very good for you, and you really don't want to let it become a chore. So do what you need to do to reset, keep it fun, get out there and be successful. And remember, sometimes it's the simplest approach that catches the most fish. Ask crusty old Captain Cliff about that. So I'm curious if anybody else has that kind of personal pressure they put on themselves to eke out every bit of maximum efficiency they can, min-maxing their fishing trips, and whether or not it actually impacts your joy in the sport at all, and if you have to reset. Throw it down in the comments. Let me know your top go-to streamlined, you're gonna have a simple day on the water baits. If you want some tackle in a streamlined, simplified way, check out tagintackle.com. That is the philosophy behind the entire site. We don't even try to carry every weight and color of every bait out there. We gather through our network of fishermen, guides, and just our exploration of what others are doing across the country, the baits that really work in a streamlined, simplified way, so that we're not adding overwhelming choice to an already potentially overwhelming sport. Keep it simple with a few confidence baits. Check out tagintackle.com, where everything is 10% off MSRP at all times. If you like this video, like, subscribe, please do the whole thing to support the channel. Thank you so much. Have a great time out there on the water, y'all. Till the next one, take care.